Earlier this week, former National Security Advisor and Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice insulted me and effectively all fellow China historians working at Stanford University and beyond. Rice, who is the new director of the Hoover Institution, which is based at Stanford University, said the following, and let me try to get this correct. Let's start by really bringing the best young historians of China and India. Okay? History is being practiced in the academy in a way that's not really very inspiring. History departments ask much narrower questions than in years past. Now, Rice doesn't mention anyone by name, but the message is pretty loud and clear. One of her first acts as the new director of the Hoover Institution, which at the moment is kind of encased in controversy surrounding the recent issues over COVID-19 and advice to the Trump presidency, was in essence to throw a big stone at colleagues who work literally steps away from her new office. Let's take a look at some of these narrow topics that all of us historians at Stanford work on. Let's see. We have guns, the Industrial Revolution, migration across the US-Mexico border, the environmental history of North America, rape, the survival strategy of Chinese peasants at the lowest rungs of the socioeconomic ladder, Martin Luther King, the experience of African Americans in the United States Constitution, British Empire, and the list goes on and on. For myself, I only work on extremely narrow topics, including how the Chinese state deals with ethnic minorities in its country, and the history of Chinese information technology. You know, things that hardly are ever in the news, except like every goddamn day. Now, of course, as the saying goes, you can lead a person to the library, but you cannot make them think. So perhaps Rice is just unaware of the kind of scholarship that is taking place about 100 feet from where she does her work every day now. Beyond that, I'm not exactly sure that we historians or the wider world should put a great deal of stock in Rice's assessment of scholarship. If we look back at the reviews of her earliest work, that is her first book around 1985, the flagship journal of history wrote a scathing review of her book. And as we know, her later work in the year 2003, co-authored with George Bush, Dick Cheney, and others, met with similar criticism. Reviews of that work, i.e. the Iraq War, called it a war crime. Now, this is just the latest episode of the Hoover Institution and its fellows lobbing grenades into History Corner at Stanford University. There's just one after another of these face-palm moments. Infamously, Neil Ferguson, who is now a fellow at the Hoover Institution, lambasted the history department at Stanford, along with some other institutions.
Stanford's History 41Q is entitled Mad Women, the History of Women and Mental Illness in the US. Why have women been the witches and hysterics of the past? Think about that for a minute.
Putting aside his charming demeanor and this kind of handsome, charismatic aura he has, in essence, what he's calling for, and kind of what Rice is too, is something like, make history great again. Muga, muga, no, muga, no, muga, muga. I don't know. Then, once Ferguson was appointed as a Hoover Fellow, he decided to make a big splash by organizing an applied history conference. The applied part meaning kind of useful history. Well, this completely blew up in his and pretty much the Hoover's face when it turned out that his conference was the whitest, most male conference that probably has ever been organized since history was great. It was so white and so male that personally I think it should give rise to a kind of scale. Let's call it the Fergie scale. And I'm imagining something like the Richter scale, where if a conference or a panel has a rating of 4 Fergies, that would be 10 times whiter and 10 times more male than one with a Fergie scale of 3. Just an idea. So what to do about this? My appeal to the Hoover Institution and to its fellows is simple. Get over it. If you want a job in the history department at Stanford University, apply for one. We'll make sure to circulate any calls for any openings in the department, I promise. And if you don't know what historical scholarship really is, I invite you to apply to our graduate program. We are accepting grad students this year. We are reviewing applications. Short of these two things, keep your Make History Great Again nonsense to yourself, for God's sake. I'll see you in the next video.